it is my pleasure to introduce the two biggest parts of the Ruthless Variety program, John Ashbrook and Michael Duncan. They are the leaders, the heart, the soul of the Ruthless Variety program. Gentlemen, good to see you. We had our own bracket. Josh Holmes and Comfortably Smug, unfortunately, did not make it. And so, I hopefully at some point we can welcome them back. But this is our own variety March Madness edition here. You guys won the brackets. Voting was just done internally here on the show. But I'm glad to see you both win. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sean. And I got to tell you, I think I'm going to get some of that sleeping powder for Michael Duncan, because this morning when I woke up, I had like 6 notifications in our Slack channel. The guy got up at like 4 a.m. and had all these ideas. It was like, I couldn't sleep last night. I think he needs it.
Well, I will tell you this. I'm not kidding when I say this. I love Beam's Dream Powder. No kidding. I take it. I love it. But secondly, I got to be honest with you, Mr. Ashbrook. I knew all this because you guys, look, I don't know how you did it, but you ended up putting me in your Slack channel. And and I was a little embarrassed with some of the conversations. The Holmes guy, I don't understand his sense of humor, because some of those comments are just inappropriate. But I just wanted to come forward and admit that I was added to the Slack channel. And so, look, let's just start there for a second, because I've got some questions about your tournament that I want to get into. They're not going to be easy questions, so I hope you came prepared. But listen, according to Caroline Levitt and Tom Cotton, the story that, or the new sort of narrative, is that the signal was authorized to have some discussions. And I guess my question for both of you is, if that's the case, then is it really that the sin in this story is just that Jeffrey Goldberg got admitted to it?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It's just a mistake that was made. But, when I read that whole signal chain, it doesn't feel as explosive as The Atlantic or Jeffrey Goldberg would make it seem. It sounds like it's a lot of colleagues deliberating at the highest level about American foreign policy. Like, I don't know. I'm actually sort of heartened that all of those considerations go into a conversation like this.
Yeah, I mean, that headline that he wrote, that they were passing along war plans, was completely overwritten. It was like fist emojis and American flag emojis. It was not war plans.
But it wasn't just the fist. It was, did you see that fist? That was a classified fist. You're not allowed to just make that fist on any, that's not a regular emoji. That's a classified emoji. And when that fist is next to an American flag, that's when it gets to the level of TS. That's
right. That's exactly secret. Right.
Yeah,
that's exactly right, Sean. And that is why people pay $1,000 a year for a subscription to The Atlantic, so that they can get that kind of reporting.
Oh, God, I hope not.
But you know what?
I don't know. So it's too much.
So I made this point this morning on our morning meeting, and I'm not dismissing whether or not so there was a violation. That's not. But Jeffrey Goldberg, with all due respect, actually he gets no respect, does not have any. When he uses the word war plan or classified information, those are actual terms: confidential, secret, top secret, TSSCI. Like, those are actual classifications made by the government, made by an originator of classification that he is not familiar with. And this gets to your point that he is sensationalizing something for clicks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's exactly what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. The Atlantic is something that every once in a while there's a story that people talk about. Now they've got a story people are talking about. It was a dishonest headline, and they all knew that it was dishonest. They didn't actually have to write that it was war plans for people to look. I mean, a reporter sort of like sneaking his way into a chat that he's not supposed to be a part of, and then just waiting in the weeds for somebody to say something so then they can report on it. I mean, that seems pretty dishonest to me.
So here's my question. Let's say hypothetically, in all seriousness, that in you guys mistakenly added somebody, a reporter, to your Slack channel that you guys use. Do you think it's on there? It's on them to say, guys, I'm on this and I shouldn't be, or is it on you to monitor it?
Well, it's a little bit of both. I mean, you should. It was a mistake to have a Slack channel or a chat that involves people of such a high level, and for somebody not to have gone through the numbers and figured out, hey, there's somebody in here who shouldn't be in here. So it's a little bit on both. But also, if you think about how a normal person would react in a situation like that, a normal person out there who's been added inadvertently to some channel that they're not supposed to be a part of, you'd like to think that they'd say, hey, heads up, guys, I shouldn't be in here. I shouldn't be listening to these conversations.
But 100%, if this happened at Ruthless, I would get the blame as the internet guy. Everybody would be like, oh, the internet guy let him in.
Right. Yeah. You heard him.
Well, there always has to be a scapegoat, although I am surprised. I would have blamed Smug just by default. But the thing that's interesting to me is I honestly, and I'm not kidding, I woke up this morning, right? And I went through my contacts and I saw, okay, do you think it was literally like they meant George Goldberg, like he works at the National? I thought to myself, like, what circumstance would have prompted you to bring him in? Because it was a mistake. There's no question about it. I don't think Mike Waltz was like, hey, let me see if I can just shock everyone by adding Jeffrey Goldberg to the situation. Right. But I wonder, do you think it was just that he had George Goldberg or Jen Goldberg at the NSC and meant to bring him in?
I mean, that's the most plausible explanation. It's hard to really see any other way that could have happened, you know. But again, it's like it's on everybody. If somebody added me to a channel like that inadvertently, I know I would say, fellas, please, I'm not supposed to be in here, or try to like extricate myself from the situation. I know he's curious, and I know he's like, hey, I hit pay dirt because I'm a part of something, and now I can report on it, and people might read the Atlantic when they otherwise wouldn't have. But I mean, to go to the next level and call it war plans is just completely dishonest.
Well, and that's the thing, is that there's actual war plans. That's not what they're discussing. Is he giving, in the military, we call that a sit rep. Hegseth is giving a situational report as to what the status is. That's not a plan, right? And that's very different. And for Goldberg, who has no background in national security, to claim it's one thing when it's not, it still may be inappropriate. I'm not trying to excuse it, but he doesn't have an understanding or a background in national security to be going off on what this really is.
Right. I mean, I'm kind of glad he actually did this reporting, because we got to see there the policy of the Trump administration is that Europe is freeloading on us around the world, you know, and I'm glad that we are recognizing that again in this country when it comes to things like the defense of Europe, that maybe, I don't know, Europeans should do more, or that maybe there should be a remunerance if we're going to defend the, you know, right of navigation in the Persian Gulf, you know?
But but I want to get to that in a second, because I agree with you that like anyway, let me settle one quick thing. I kind of wonder, is Trump more pissed that this went to Jeffrey Goldberg, or that it stepped on what would have otherwise been a good day? Because he had a cabinet meeting yesterday. There's this big announcement that Hyundai was investing money in plant and facilities down in Louisiana. And I kind of thought to myself, having worked for Trump, was he more pissed that you guys let Jeffrey Goldberg into the conversation, or that you stepped on my good day?
I mean, I can't imagine he was happy, probably for all of the above. Now, I'm not going to put words in his mouth. You work for him very closely, so you would have a pretty good idea of how he might react in a situation like that. I'm guessing he wasn't thrilled.
Here's how I think it went down. He calls Waltz and he goes, Mike, really? Jeffrey Goldberg? Are you crazy? He's a lunatic. I think he had to justify why he knew Jeffrey Goldberg. But I want to go back to what Mr. Duncan was talking about for a second. This idea that why are we so embarrassed, or like this constant refrain comes out that like how we treat our friends. And I don't know about you guys, but like if you guys were going out with all the other dudes in the podcast and you constantly made, you know, one of you guys pay the bill, at some point someone would say, hey, we're all supposed to be fellas together, right? Like, why am I constantly getting hooked on the bill? That's not how, like, one of the things I think is missing is that's not how you treat friends. If Europe wants to be our friend, we don't get saddled with the bill every time.
Well, and I appreciate that the policy of the Trump administration in public, the policy of Donald Trump on the campaign trail, is the same thing being executed right now on a signal, you know, channel. Like, right. That's the thing. It's like, it's 100% authentic to, you know, this president and this administration.
Did you guys learn anything? I mean, to your point, like I sort of looked at the text chain, at least what Jeffrey Goldberg shared. because he says, I held back. Like that guy, first of all, responsible and Jeffrey Goldberg never in the same sentence. And the idea that he says, I held back because I didn't think it was responsible to share this information. Part of me is saying you didn't share it because you knew it undermined the narrative that you were trying to promulgate. But did you learn anything about, to your point about the decision making in the comments that went back and forth from any of these folks?
I mean, other than what you're hearing publicly is the same thing they're saying behind the scenes. I mean, that is honestly sort of comforting. I mean, that you have an administration of people who are authentic, the same person they are in public, the same person they are behind the scenes. They're not talking about things that you wouldn't like. They're not pretending to be one thing publicly.
Right. They have agreements, they have disagreements, and they build a consensus together and execute Donald Trump's vision, right? Like, I mean, that's what we should want, this administration to do.
I love the fact that at one point JD says, hey, look, let's talk about this, but I'll have your back. Like whatever that decision is that the group agrees on, I'm there. And I thought like that shows what a team this is versus, the den of vipers that I was in for a while, where it was sort of like, hey, that's cool. If you take that position, I'm going to jam you in the back and put 5 articles on the president's desk that show that you dissented. I did love the sense of team that exists in that chat that I thought was such a breath of fresh air compared to season 1.
Yeah. I mean, this whole first 100 days has just been outstanding. I mean, from the border to everything they're doing, honestly, I think to everything they're doing on tariffs, reciprocating what some of these other countries have been doing to us for years and years and years, and they're doing it together. And Sean, you know as well as we do that politics works best when it's played as a team sport. And just like you said, these guys are obviously together and they have each other's back and they're working towards a common goal, and that's the president's vision.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.